APLA's hired military men clearly did not enjoy being questioned by the Truth Commission. The APLA submission started on a very reconciliatory note with an address by the recently elected PAC leader, Dr. Stanley Mogoba.
I have supported the Truth and Reconciliation Commission at all times, even when personal hurt and humiliation was experienced, because I am convinced that this country can never break out of its cocoons of hatred and bitterness unless we reveal all the truth and seek forgiveness. The greater responsibility in that exercise, of course, naturally lies with the perpetrators of apartheid. It is in this spirit that I have extended a hand on behalf of my party to the St. James Church so that we can try to bury the painful past and help to bring reconciliation and healing to our members and to our beloved country.
But the military men had a much harsher message. It quickly became clear that the APLA strategy of attacking white civilians was going to be a central issue.
It is in this context, therefore, that the Azanian People's Liberation Army did not have the burden or problem of the so-called soft or hard target. In all honesty, the term soft or hard target did not exist in our vocabulary, and it was a foreign concept. All that mattered was the political and psychological benefit that the organization will derive from such military operations. It should be noted that the killing of genuine African civilians had intensified in the course of time. Africans attending night vigils, committing to work in Bipatong, etc., more especially in the 80s and 90s, were brutally massacred whilst the white community lived in harmony and tranquility. It should therefore not surprise anyone that targets like the St. James Church, King Williamstown, Gulf Club, Heidelberg Tavern, etc., which are more prominent or known by everybody, were selected. The leadership of the Azanian People's Liberation Army takes responsibility and full responsibility for that matter for all the operations that were conducted by the cadres and members of the Azanian People's Liberation Army. The APLA forces who carried out this operation followed the directives from their commanders, and these directives were from the highest echelons of the military leadership, that is both the High Command and the Military Commission. We do not, therefore, regret that such operation took place, and there is, therefore, nothing to apologize because we believe of the justness of our war and the correctness of our struggle.
It was stipulated that every adult person had to be armed, white person had to be armed. Now, if such a definition is given to armed preparedness by a Defense Act, ipso facto, every household, therefore, that conformed with these instructions or with these laws was a military garrison in that sense. You had commandos all over. So anything, therefore, that was defined, or any entity that was defined in the Defense Act of the time, in terms of military strategy of the regime, was, therefore, a legitimate target.
Could you indicate by what legislation and at what point that legislation was introduced, which made it a requirement that every adult person, presumably every white adult person, had to be armed and trained?
The fact of the matter is that there was training that was conducted for white adults. Women were actually trained in target shooting, men were actually trained in target shooting, and in white schools there was a regimentation of the children to raise their awareness about the war. To that extent, APLA realized that they were facing the whole white community.
The fact of the matter is that it is a well-known fact that every adult white, unless this can be denied in this house, every white South African in this room has been trained by the law, which was, I think it was a conscription law.
Just for your information, I was not so trained. I have never owned a gun. I don't know even what it looks like, so you have a benefit over me.
Mr. MKHWANAZI, it's also a well-known fact that thousands of white conscripts, in fact, refused to participate in the South African Defence Force. Some people, in fact, went to prison for fairly long periods precisely because they refused. It's also a fairly well-known fact, if we're going to use that appellation, that very large numbers of members of the white community opposed that system of militarization and conscription. How does that fact bear with the notion that every single white member of the white community would then fall within the definition of a legitimate target?
Those words that were opposed were either in exile or in jail.
I was neither in exile nor in jail.
What we are trying to ascertain as a commission is, where does the buck stop? Who accepts final accountability? The very incidences that you refer to on page 3, which I've read out, let's just confine ourselves to those, because they're quite specific. St. James's Church, King Williamstown Golf Club, Heidelberg Tavern. These were 3 specific incidences. In this case, was the political leadership at the highest level consulted prior to these attacks? And if not, in the aftermath of these, did the political leadership have any objection, or did they condone these incidences?
The structure of the Azanian People's Liberation Army ensured that APLA always remained accountable to the political leadership. We mentioned it in the document that top on the structure of the APLA leadership was the military commission. The members of the military commission were both members of the Central Committee and members of the High Command.
When these attacks took place, before the attacks took place, the leadership, the political leadership was not informed.
The important incidents are those that affect white people. It's unfortunate, but it's a perception that we have. The perception may be wrong, the perception might be right. But on a consistent basis, we observe this in these hearings, that those incidents that involve white people are highlighted. And we're not making these observations because of a racist paradigm or a racist attitude. It's simply an observation that we make. I think here, the specific examples that you want to concentrate upon, Mr. Chairman, is the incidents of St. James's and the Amy Bill ones.
The question, which was a simple one, remains unanswered. Was the leadership of the PAC aware of what took place in the incidents that it itself has brought to us? And if it only became subsequently aware of these incidents, did the leadership condone it? For right or for wrong reasons, there needs to be an answer to that.
It should therefore come as no surprise if at any stage your investigative unit here were to produce that, well, so-and-so in the leadership of the PAC had an interview and he was a little taken aback with the events as they then had unfolded in this particular incident or that particular incident. The actual selection of targets was done by the military commanders, including the commissariat, who were the representatives of the party.
Mr. Mlambo was correct. This is what PAC Central Committee member Bani Desai said in reaction to the St. James massacre.
We think that this is the work of the third force, operating in this country to destabilize the transition to democracy. We're busy discussing the Constitution here, and it's no accident that this attack has occurred in Cape Town in the manner that it has. No, we condemn this mindless violence on church-going people.
On the basis of the positions adopted in respect of the legitimacy of targeting white civilians, that by typifying white civilians in the manner in which you did carte blanche, you would have violated international law.
We did not attack white civilians, but we destroyed European invaders, dispossessors, criminals. Because here you want to create a situation whereby our struggle is as recent as the PAC. And that's not the case. Our struggle against colonialism is as old as when the colonialists set their foot here and showed their sinister motives of dispossessing our forefathers of the land. And the whole struggle, the whole armed struggle, was the continuation of that. And actually we can draw the ancient wisdom from our forefathers. When Dingaan said to the Zulu warriors, Bulala abathakathi, what did he mean? He meant that those dispossessors, abathakathi, the Zulu warriors didn't ask among themselves who were the abathakathis, who were the wizards, but they knew who the wizards were, and they were whites. And when Mushweshwe, King Mushweshwe of Basotho, in his wisdom, said, meaning that the whites will always have solidarity in oppressing the Africans. He drew that from experience, from the practical experience that was going on. And I dare say that the TRC is more concerned with the white life because even the questions are being filtered by a man who benefited hugely from the dispossession of our people. Because as far as I'm concerned, he who benefits by crime is guilty of that crime. And every white person in this country benefited from the crime of dispossession, benefited from the crime of colonialism, benefited from the crime of apartheid. But now you want to extract yourself from this crime. And it is so displeasing that the grandsons and daughters of Mushweshwe, of Shaka, of Sikukuni are now bearing the burden of their abusers. Because you abused us. All in all, the TRC doesn't encourage people to speak truth. And I dare say this whole farce, this whole circus is doomed for failure. It's doomed for failure for obvious reasons. Because you cannot reconcile the dispossessed and the dispossessor. You cannot reconcile the oppressor and the oppressed. And the fact of the matter is that the white